You know, one day I should make a video about the perfect movies of history. Because, some movies are simply perfect movies. RoboCop is a perfect movie. Predator is a perfect movie. Back to the Future is a perfect movie. The list goes on and on, but the idea is that a perfect movie is the one that has an original premise and executes this premise perfectly, not leaving anything behind or not leaving any gaps of non-explored elements in the plot. And of course, in the pantheon of these movies, Alien is probably on the top spot. This is not just a movie, but an experience. It's a puzzle box that keeps opening and revealing new and intricate, bizarre, scary, and dark ideas. It's like losing yourself in a dark corner of the universe where none of the mundane things really matter. It's like witnessing the first contact of humankind with something bigger that they will never understand. And it's a miracle of a movie itself, because if you're an avid movie lover like myself and you know the history of production of Alien, you know that this is a big conjunction of ideas that on top of each other just added to the whole product. Many brains came together to make the whole experience of Alien what it is. It all started with a broke writer-director called Dan O'Bannon. If you don't know who he is, watch my video about The Return of the Living Dead, another genius movie that was directed and written by him. But in the 70s, he was hired to work on the production design of what would be the first version of Dune in movie adaptation. A version of Dune that was going to be directed by the amazing and insane director Alejandro Jodorowsky. And if you don't know the story, you can search in any video or documentary about the production of this Dune version, that it is a whole story on itself that is fascinating. But when that production fell apart, Dan O'Bannon saw himself broke and having to return to America since he was working in Paris for Jodorowsky. With no money and no place to stay, he ended up in the house of another producer called Ronald Shusett, that at the time was a theater producer that had the rights of another science fiction called Total Recall. Both men agreed to work on the story of Total Recall, but Dan O'Bannon also knew that the production of Total Recall couldn't go ahead very easily because it demanded a higher budget. Since he needed money faster than this, and who of us doesn't, he decided to put another idea on the paper that would demand a smaller budget and also could be produced as a B horror science fiction movie. And his idea was about a group of astronauts that land on a planet after they receive a signal in their systems, apparently a signal calling for help. And this is the most fascinating part, because he had this beginning, he had this first act where the astronauts come in contact with some kind of strange organism that affects them. Then Ronald Shusett came with the idea that this organism should impregnate one of them, and then an alien or a new organism would birth from this astronaut's chest, which is such a crazy and balls-to-the-wall idea that I imagine, as a writer myself, that when you come up with an idea like that, the pinball lights in your head go bling, 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 and you just know that you have something groundbreaking in your hands. The problem is that Dan O'Bannon didn't know exactly where to go from there. He didn't have the second half to the third act of the story. But he did have another idea for another script that was about this air bomber flying over the Second World War, and after going through some clouds in the sky, some creatures mysteriously enter the plane and start to kill some of the passengers, with some of the other soldiers inside having to block parts of the plane to escape from these creatures that were apparently gremlins. But not the gremlins you're thinking about. There were gremlins, the creatures that destroy machinery and this stuff. So thinking about this other idea, he decided to incorporate the whole thing into the second half of Alien, making the whole thing be about the creature hunting the passengers inside the ship. And this is what I mean about conjunction of ideas, when you mix elements to create something unique. And that combined with the direction of Ridley Scott and also the design of the creature by H.R. Giger, you have this explosion of design, story, mood, script, and this without mentioning other elements that are very important like soundtrack and acting, of course. The actors and their characterization is crucial to the whole thing. And for a movie that initially had the modesty of being just a B science fiction movie in the style of the Roger Corman productions, for getting the right people at the right time and have all these ideas mixed, you ended up with something that is for a horror movie basically, a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like Ridley Scott likes to say, in space. You have what people call, what is it again? A masterpiece of cinema. Yesterday I was watching this movie in a new projector that I have in my house, projecting the Blu-ray into a big screen, and I was just marveled by how the atmosphere and the visuals envelop you. Even though you have watched this movie about 200 times in your life, Alien continues to be that experience that every time I watch it, the only regret I have is to never have had the experience of watching for the first time in a movie theater at the time that it came out in 1979, with a whole audience that didn't know what was the alien, that probably had just seen the trailer that came out with the tagline, "In space, no one can hear you scream." By the way, one of the most amazing trailers ever created in history. So every time I put it on, I try to do this experience that is kind of impossible, but I try anyway. That is to put myself mentally in the position of someone who had never watched the movie before. Because that's what Alien is all about, to go through the experience of the whole terrifying and shocking discoveries that the crew of the Nostromo go through when they meet this new organism and face all the steps of its evolution. So when I mentally put myself in that place, I always get fascinated by the puzzle box, like I said before, that this movie is. From the moment the crew lands on LV-426 until the discovery of the derelict and its pilot, the whole mystery of the chest exploded from inside, and then the discovery of the eggs, the face hugger, the chest burster. Let's go one by one together, shall we? So watching the movie for the first time in a projection, like I said, right from the beginning you can't help but be amazed by the whole machinery magnitude inside the Nostromo. You know, the hallways, the doors, the tubes, the cables, the metal, the objects of scene, even the smallest details like warning signs, making the whole thing look like an actual functional place. Plus you have so many different sections in this whole ship that it really looks like a vivid place that has been used and reused by many crews during the years. This current crew of the Nostromo is just another one in their jobs, the famous space truckers. We are introduced to them in this amazing wake-up scene that is so pure and kind of ethereal. And this is something that goes through this entire movie, this sense of purity, because we essentially have 7 characters and that's it. So we get to know them by their actions inside the circumstances. We don't have this long explosion scene in the beginning showing each one of them and who they are. We get to know who they are through their relationships during this whole bizarre occurrence. So it's almost like we are one of them inside the crew during all the events, and this is what makes the whole thing so pure, because every time we lose one, it's impactful. You have this sense of loss that you actually missed someone because we only have 7 of them. So this is amazing because it brings this sense of purity to the story. We are with them all the time, inside this place all the time. And the story goes through many phases, like the first being an exploration movie, which by concept is already very interesting and intriguing because it brings us to the mystery of what will unleash the whole plot or unleash the creature. And for me, the first encounter with the derelict and its pilot is already one of the best moments of the whole movie, because every time we get to this shot that slowly opens to reveal the whole magnitude of the creature, it's so impactful. It's so, what the fuck is this? And this brings me a little outside of this movie to talk about the franchise itself, because today it's inevitable that we don't remember of Prometheus, knowing now the explanation of what this pilot is, but I truly like to ignore it. Just like I said in previous videos, I didn't even make special videos for Prometheus and Alien Covenant, because if I do, it will be a shit show of me ranting about the terrible decisions that Ridley Scott did in those movies. The first one being, this is not an alien pilot, but a suit. A suit for the engineers. Ugh. But I say whatever. Look at this. This is not a suit. This is a full fossilized alien that is glued to the chair, and we were never meant to know who he is because it doesn't matter. What matters is that he's a plot device to give us an idea of what will happen with the characters, especially when we talk about the exploded chest. It's just like the future war of Terminator. That reality is just a background element to tell a story about the present. That's all it is. And here in Alien, I always like to see the story from a point of view that this is the first time that humankind has come in contact with the xenomorph. The first time that humans stumbled into something bigger than themselves, almost godlike, that will never be into our comprehension. And this scene alone of the derelict already give us that sense. And this is it for me. I don't need any more explanation. In fact, it looks like if humans try to explain it, it will be something completely underwhelming, like it was in Prometheus and Alien Covenant. So the mystery of seeing something so incomprehensible like this whole derelict pilot that is so incredibly dark and gothic and over-designed in a good sense by Giger always gives me the notion of we are so small and we are so lost in this dark corner of the universe. And then obviously we have the whole evolution of the creature itself coming from the egg and then the face hugger and chest burster. So let's talk about my favorite scene in this movie. The scene that, like I said before, it was the one that convinced the screenwriters that they had something special in their hands. And it was also the scene that sold this script to the producers that would eventually take to 20th Century Fox and produce the movie. The birth of the alien in Kane's chest. Probably one of the best directed scenes of all time, in my opinion. And I'm not exaggerating just because I love this movie. I truly believe that from the beginning of the dinner scene, with all the characters casually talking and actually happy for seeing Kane back on his foot and alive and well, to the moment that slowly things start to go south, and the editing of the scene is so clever in showing all the individual characters and their reactions to this event, progressing slowly from, my God, let's help this guy because he's really feeling sick for something, to extreme confusion of not knowing what the hell is going on, and finally extreme shock of seeing something that is equally traumatic as incomprehensible, is what makes this scene be so incredibly triumphant in terms of horror, pure horror in a movie. This scene is so amazing in all its aspects, the acting, the editing, the visual effects, of course, that from this point on, even though I love the rest of the movie, it definitely loses its shocking factor, and it becomes a little less than it was before, if you know what I mean. Because this is the high point. This is what the movie is all about. Imagine yourself seeing this movie for the first time in 1979 in the movie theater. In fact, if one of you actually had the experience at the time, please don't forget to comment below and tell me what did you think and what was your experience seeing this chest-bursting scene for the first time. Because with the audience mentality of going into this movie not knowing what the alien really is before watching it, after the scene, the game changes completely. I bet everybody in the cinema at the time went, okay, I'm in for a ride, and a traumatic ride. It is exactly what Ridley Scott meant to be at the time. And when I put here the title of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre of Space, that's what he wanted to do because he was traumatized by that movie. He loved Texas Chainsaw Massacre so much that that's what he wanted to do in space. By the way, the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre is definitely a perfect movie as well. that executes its premise in a very effective way, so effective that it brings trauma to the audience. And if we compare the two movies, which we shouldn't do because they are completely different movies and different experiences, Alien has a much harder job because people here on Earth knows what it is a road trip. So it's much more easy to relate to this kind of experience of a road trip that goes completely south and ends in death. But not as astronauts in space being chased by a creature inside a ship. So the movie must have this superior level of experience to be able to traumatize so much people like it did at the time. And of course, this is totally connected with the characters and the cast. Every actor and their characters are perfect in this movie. And this is what I think is so ironic. There is this argument in movies that you must relate to the characters to be able to like them and feel for them when something bad happens, which I completely disagree here in Alien. I don't think these characters are relatable at all. I mean, I really think Parker and Brett are funny as hell, especially Parker. I love some scenes with Yaphet Kotto just saying stuff. I could listen to this guy speaking all the time and he's amazing. There's this particular scene where Ash and Dallas are examining Kane after he was face hugged and everybody's watching on the window outside and he keeps shouting all the time, "Why don't you guys just freeze him? Why they don't freeze him?" It's so funny. And I mean, he's not wrong, because had they done that, they would have much less trouble with the whole creature. But anyway, what I mean is that none of these characters are actually relatable, like you actually feel for them. But what these characters are comprehensible or realistic. They act like normal people would in the situation they are. So my experience watching the movie is that I don't really like any of them, but I can envision myself as a member of the crew. They are all workers, and they have to stand each other instead of liking each other. They are bored, tired, they just want to get home soon. What all of us workers of life want. And in the midst of all these characters serve their purposes very well. Lambert is the whining girl, but she's also the eyes of the audience. Parker and Brett are the greatest examples of the blue-collar guys, even though everybody's a blue-collar here, but they are the main ones. Kane is there just to be impregnated and give birth. We don't actually have much time to know who he really is, but someone had to do the job, right? Ash represents the corporation, like we eventually discover, and he's not human, so he plays a big part in the lore around the whole story. And then we have our couple of heroes, or at least what the audience chooses as the couple of heroes automatically when they go into a movie like this. Because the movie intentionally takes us to the place where we see Dallas as the hero and Ripley as his romantic interest. Because he is the wild captain that just wants things done, regardless of breaking the rules sometimes. And she is the one that is apparently his conscience trying to follow the rules, which causes the intimate conflict between them. So when the movie surprises us by killing Dallas midway through the story, we are caught again in the puzzle box, unraveling and placing Ripley as our anchor in the whole thing. And this is absolutely fantastic, because if you pay attention to Sigourney Weaver's performance since the beginning of the movie, you will notice how great she is. Even in the smallest details, like her eyes, the way she looks at things, her expressions, she little by little starts to take charge of the whole thing and be the survivor she has to become when the movie just throws the whole protagonism on her lap. By the way, she's also absolutely stunning in this movie. Sigourney Weaver was a goddess, and I believe many nerd guys got a crush on her right away in this first movie. Her beauty is also definitely complemented by her strength in scene. And I don't know if many people talk about this, but we can definitely make a compilation of all the movies where she grabbed somebody by the collar and threw this character against the wall. She does this with Ash in this movie, then with Burke in the second one. She tries to do this against Dylan in Alien 3, but actually he throws her against the wall. And in Alien 4, we don't have her necessarily grabbing somebody by the collar, but she grabs Johnner, Ron Perlman's character, by the throat and tries to give his tongue to Winona Ryder, so that counts. I guess this is Ripley's thing, and I love it. And what else can we talk about this movie? Oh, of course, the alien, why not? After all, he's the title character. And in my country, Brazil, we actually have the name Alien, but we also have a second title that is the Eighth Passenger, which I always thought it was unnecessary, but it's not that bad. It's kind of clever in a way. But the xenomorph in this movie is another interesting thing that I always like to reflect about every time I watch it, because it never looks to me that he's a simple killing machine like he became in the other movies. There is something more about this alien in the way he acts, or some of his actions in a sense. In many scenes we see that he's kinda disturbed in his sleep instead of actually chasing people through the ship. We see this in Brett's death, in Dallas' scene inside the air ducts, and especially in the ending when Ripley is inside the Narcissus module and the alien is there basically sleeping and he gets disturbed by her hitting some buttons. This is another great mystery about the xenomorph that I don't think it was explored in subsequent sequels. Is he simply a killing machine by nature? Because during this movie it looks like the alien is almost like a frail monster. He's not necessarily this unbeatable machine like Ash says. He almost looks sick and he doesn't want to be disturbed and is trying to find some place to hide inside the Nostromo. So when he stumbles with some human or some human stumbles with him, then he follows his nature of just killing. Again, it looks like he's that way. I'm not necessarily saying that that was the intention of the creators, but it's something interesting to wonder about. And I guess future writers in the series could have explored the next levels of evolution of the creature, because here he is a full-grown xenomorph, but in his early stages of life, we don't actually know if this is the last stage of evolution of the creature. This regular xenomorph could go through some more transformations, we just didn't have the time for it. But anyway, this is a job for creators to think about. In general, this is Alien and my thoughts about this wonderful movie. It's a magical, wonderful, dark experience that every time I go through, I always feel lucky to be alive and have this wonder to watch anytime I want it. And this is it. This video ends my series of videos talking about this wonderful franchise. If you want, you can watch the other videos talking about Aliens, Alien 3, and Alien Resurrection right here on the channel. And now we're ready to watch the new movie in the series, Alien Romulus, that will open next week. And we can only hope that it is another great movie in the series, or at least a respectable one and a fun ride. And before I go, let me talk about an interesting thing that happened to me before recording this video. There was this incredible short animation that I stumbled on the YouTube by coincidence called Alien Monday. And I thought it was great, very well animated, and a great story, 20 minutes of shorts. It's an independent production from a creator called Paul Johnson. He has this incredible channel with other animation shorts that are very much in the style of animes, something that I really love if you know my channel. And I love to support these independent creators making this wonderful art on YouTube by themselves. Apparently, this one took 6 years for him to produce this Alien short. And I do that because I also have my own independent animations channel called Joe Ripper, with many short animations created by me, of course with much less artistry than him. But anyway, I love this kind of thing, and I will leave the link of his animation right down here below in the description. And if you can, support the channel and subscribe because it's awesome. And this is it for today. If you can, also subscribe to my channel and leave your like in this video for more content of Trashing with Gus. Alright? Thank you so much. See you in the next trashing video, and bye bye.